and we'll wait for the rest of the participants to trickle in. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking time out of your busy fall schedules today to join us. We find ourselves in the second day of October, or as some financial publications are calling it, Uptober, with 2 strong consecutive market days almost behind us. That being said, we're not here to talk about markets. The focus of today's presentation is in the spirit of being a valuable partner to advisors across Canada, and CI Global Asset Management is committed to bringing the best thought leadership in order to help you all with your business. I'm joined today by my colleague Morgan Bland to present you this exciting and insightful presentation all about high-performing teams. Please keep in mind that there are CE credits available for this presentation, and a follow-up email with a short quiz will be sent to everyone shortly after the presentation. At CI, we are more confident than ever before that advisor teams are the way of the future. Today, our practice management team will be focusing on high-performing teams, helping you build, run, and scale a successful advisory team. While a team can come in all shapes and sizes, working within a high-performance team allows advisors to leverage everyone's strengths and provide a unique experience to their clients. The goal of our session today is to help you take your business to the next level and answer those burning questions on how to foster a first-class team dynamic. Our presenter today is Ryan Becker. Ryan's the Director of Advisor Engagement with our CI Advisor Consulting Practice Management team. Ryan has spent his whole career working in asset management in roles ranging from back to the front office, most recently running a team of internal wholesalers. He joined CI in March of 2021 and is responsible for facilitating one-on-one consulting sessions, digitally crafting and sharing thought leadership, and delivering presentations. Ryan is passionate about practice management and has made a big impact with advisors in the areas of modernizing advisors' digital presence, implementing processes to enhance efficiencies, prospecting for new clients, and positioning advisors' practices for the future. Ryan is also very active on LinkedIn, so if you don't yet follow him, I highly suggest it. He is one of my favorite contacts over there, always providing some awesome content for specifically for advisors and practices. With that being said, Ryan, please take it away. The floor is yours.
Dan, thank you for the warm welcome. Good afternoon, everybody. All that talk about fall and positive markets, maybe today's the day that I finally try a pumpkin spice latte. I don't know. I've never had one, so I hear good things. Maybe I'll try one this afternoon. But today we're going to be talking about high performance teams. And I wanted to start off today's presentation with a story. It's a story that's probably come up for me because I've been watching Netflix and a Drive for Success. I can't even really remember the title of the F1 show that they have there, but this is about 2003, not a recent race. Actually, it was the final Austrian Grand Prix of the Formula One racing circuit that year. Michael Schumacher, who, if you don't know, is arguably one of the greatest F1 drivers in history, he had secured the pole position. And the team is about to, or the race is about to start, and he's driving for Team Ferrari. 23 laps in, Schumacher's still in first. His team decides it's time for him to come in for a pit run. But there's a problem. And the problem is actually with his fuel filler. And as he comes into pit lane, there are just flames, and they're billowing out of the back of his car. They're just actually inches from the back of his head. All of this is being recorded on camera. Now, all of the different parties have trained for this. They know their role, they know their responsibilities, and they trust that they're all going to execute and keep them moving towards their ultimate goal, which is winning the race, the driver's championship, and the team championship. Now, instead of just leaping from the car with these flames back there, Schumacher stays calm. He's seen sitting in the car still, and actually nonchalantly, he's wiping fire extinguisher flame from his face, his visor. And the pit crew puts the fire out. Now, his team lost 3 seconds. They lost the fire extinguisher, and there were absolutely some frayed nerves of a number of different fans. But 46 laps later, they'd won the race. Schumacher had won the Austrian Grand Prix. So why am I starting with this story in relation to this presentation? Well, F1 teams and specifically teams like this Ferrari team are phenomenal examples of high performance teams. And this is just an encapsulation of one of those moments where everybody's doing their job and focusing on their ultimate goal. And the choreography is just incredible. It's also a great analogy for the work that you do, but I'm going to use that one at the end of the presentation. But today, what we're going to walk through are some of the ingredients that go into creating that high performance team and culture. And then hope to have you walk away with this presentation with a little bit of a recipe for your business. Now, before I jump in, I do want to take a brief moment to further highlight my team, CI Advisor Consulting, and then my specific team within it, which is the practice management team. But CI Advisor Consulting is an elite group of specialists, and we're dedicated to deepening CI Global Asset Management's relationship with you. And we do that by providing support in the areas of tax, retirement, estate planning, and obviously practice management. Now, you can access our insights in multiple different ways, all with the goal of helping you build a stronger business and hopefully better relationship with your clients as well. Now, our partners on the tax, retirement, and estate planning team, who we would affectionately refer to as TREP, they're a group of lawyers, financial planners, and accountants, and they spend their days helping you determine how to apply current law and tax strategy to your business and to your clients. Now, Dan mentioned this, but I'm on the practice management team, and we're a group of individuals with experience in coaching, consulting, research, branch management, investment advice, and leadership. Our team, who are on the screen now, we use this expertise to develop relevant real-world solutions, hopefully like the presentation you're going to see today. So that's my infomercial on CI Advisor Consulting. If you want to learn more about how you can access our resources and our insights, please reach out to Morgan or to Dan, and we can go from there. So the presentation. What are we going to talk about through the rest of our time together today? I'm going to talk about really three different things. First, I'm going to start by defining what a high-performing team is, and then what some of the characteristics that go into these teams that really make it different than just any old team. And then second, we're going to look at some of the steps that you can apply to build, run, and then scale your high-performing team. And then the third area that we're going to look at today is some tactics. I'm going to share some tactics for you to make you get on your path to creating and building that winning team. So that's the plan. And let's dive in by at least defining and starting on the same page as to what we mean by a high-performing team. And the definition that I would come up with here is it's a group of goal-focused individuals that come together with different expertise, and they collaborate, they innovate, and they produce superiorly consistent results. And they work within a team culture where everyone is working towards some form of a common goal. In fact, the quote that you're seeing on the screen is apt because really high performance culture is more of a journey than a destination. And I think it's an excellent way to think about it because if you're just a one-hit wonder of high performance, that could just be luck. But to do it consistently, as I mentioned, and achieving that outperformance consistently over time, that is in very many ways a structural component and can be built. And there are countless examples of high performance teams, but I want to share one with you that is really out of this world. And my dad jokes are coming across because what I'm talking about is the team at NASA that worked together to land humans on the moon. And it is arguably one of the coolest feats maybe that humans have accomplished. But this took place in 1961. Well, 1961 is when it really started, and that's when JFK announced the US's commitment to land a human on the moon. And the complexity of the challenge, it was just incredible. But by the summer of 1969, the words, "This is one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind," were heard across millions of living rooms around the world. And that was as Neil Armstrong stepped down onto the surface of the moon. So really, how do they do it? Well, a couple of the building blocks were putting together a team that had one very clear goal in mind: to land someone on the moon. And they were fully committed to reaching that goal. They threw everything that they had at it. And there were countless people that were involved. But everybody that was involved had a clearly defined role and responsibility within the group. And they were in constant communication with each other. And that's really not a small feat when you consider that this happened in the 60s. But everyone was fully informed about where things were going in the progress. And they trusted each other. And that trust promoted collaboration. And that collaboration allowed them to really push those boundaries of innovation. So it is an outstanding example of high performance. But there are a lot of examples within our industry as well. And high performing advisor teams, they come in all shapes and sizes. Typically, they begin as a solo advisor and then they grow from there. Really, a team can be as small as two, and there are many that are that size. And there are also examples of teams that have shared resources too. Because despite sizes, high performance teams all share similar characteristics and foundational building blocks. But maybe one of the even better questions is, why even create a team? Well, outside of that camaraderie, research shows that it's worth your time. I'm going to bring a couple points up here, but the first stat that I'm bringing up is that there's evidence that teams in general outperform individuals, so on average by almost 2%. And there's almost double the likelihood of having above median financial performance when a team is working towards some form of a common vision. That's the upside. There is a downside. And the downside to just cobbling together any group of individuals, because there is research, and this was done by Price Metrics, but it shows that the bottom quartile of advisory teams actually shrinks by about 3%. So how do you ensure that your team are in those top quartiles? It really does start with instilling and building out a high performance culture. And in order to build a culture of high performance, there are some shared components, and we'll talk about three. First, there's a shared vision, and this is crucial because this allows everyone on the team to know really the direction that you've got to go to meet some form of a common goal. And then we've got shared values. And these shared values touch individuals on a personal level. Everybody feels that they're fit within the company and the team and the culture and its purpose. And then we've got a shared mindset. And this is where the positivity and ambition, these fuel these minds to achieve these desired results. And it is another ingredient that goes into a high performance team's culture. And when a team shares these foundational elements, that culture allows then other characteristics of their vibe build off of it. And here's a list of some of those characteristics. All of these were embodied by that Apollo team, and they're present in many high-performing advisory teams as well. And I'm not going to read them off because I'm going to work through a number of these as we go throughout the presentation. And in fact, you're probably incorporating some of these in your business today. But in order to really hit that high performance, you have to be doing all of them to build a great team. And doing that requires a bit of a mindset shift in order to be able to facilitate and accomplish this. So let me share another story with you. But this one is about an advisory team and about how this individual made that shift within his business. And it's the story of Paul. Paul's an advisor at a fairly large IROC firm. His team currently is comprised of 8 individuals, and they're running about $500 million under management. But we all know that that doesn't just happen overnight. It takes time. So going back to when Paul started, he was 25, just hung his shingle, new advisor, he's working on his own. He was really an excellent communicator. He is now too, but he was a student of all things finance. And he came out of the gates really strong, built a good growth trajectory off the bat. And within the first few years, he started to reach that point. And it's that point where he had been stretched too thin. He was starting to meet capacity, and he wasn't growing at the same rate that he wanted to be. So he reached out. He asked an individual who he knew, who was running a fairly sizable team at the time, and he said, "What's your secret? Like, what should I be considering as a new advisor hitting this wall?" And the response that he received really set him on the path for this mindset shift. And the response that he got was, "You are an outstanding advisor, Paul. And if you just want to be an outstanding advisor, you can continue to move that forward, but you're not going to necessarily meet your vision for where you want your business to be looking like. So you need to be thinking like a business owner first." He was also then told that the belief was that the key to achieving long-term success, in this advisor's opinion, was to build that talented team around him. A team that could help build capacity, a team that could help him in areas that he wasn't necessarily as strong as. So to Paul's credit, one of the things that he did is he took that advice to heart, and he really started spending more time working on his business. He systematized it. He worked on his leadership skills. He before he even had anybody to lead. And then he added a number of key people over time once he had these systems in place. And today, even though he would still consider himself a financial advisor, that's the work that he does, he really truly does consider himself a business owner first and foremost. And I've absolutely simplified a lot of the things that went into what Paul did, but I am going to break down some of the components that built his winning team that you can apply to yours as well. And there are really 3 tasks that a leader needs to focus on to create a winning team, and you're seeing them on the screen. You need to build the right foundation. The right foundation then sets the tone for your team. Then you need to run your team. You need to run your team effectively, providing just the right amount of inspiration, empowerment, and then development. And then you have to scale your team. Scale your team properly to support those growth plans that you have and ensure that you're able to get the most out of your team. And then also knowing and being able to answer the question as to how do I add and scale them as well. So the first place to start is building. So over the next few slides, let's take a look at how you can build that foundation for high performance within your teams. So it does start with that strong culture. And I talked about this high level before, but you do need to really build from the ground up. Each one of these components needs to be defined, needs to be documented, and then needs to be further communicated to your teams. So let's break these down. And let's start with the shared vision. So the shared vision is about where is your business going? And for that matter, why? What do you want your business to look like in 5, 10, 20 years? Maybe even a more important question is what kind of clients do you want to be working with? A successful or a really good example of a shared vision would be something like, we want to be the regional leader for navigating business owners' successful transitions. Teams' goals are then established and based on that vision. And another element of the overall culture is going to be shared values. So these are the values that that culture is going to stem from. And they're really crucial to dig very, very deep on, because the analogy that I would use here is like if you're using the app Waze, there are many routes that can get you to your destination. But you really want to navigate the way that your values are pointing rather than taking shortcuts that detour from them. And the third element is going to be shared mindset. And this is really getting everyone in the same frame of mind. This isn't done to create groupthink, but rather it's being done to create a structure that allows everybody to be in that right state of mind and hopefully working from a similar or the same playbook. But all of these pieces, they have to be created intentionally by your design. And you do need to ensure that part of the foundation is ensuring that everyone has clearly defined roles and responsibilities. And they need to be reviewed by everyone on the team so they understand not only what they need to do, but how what they do fits into the big picture. Defined roles and responsibilities do accomplish many, many things. But the 2 that we find are the most important are this. So 1, creating more ownership and accountability around especially important tasks. And this allows everyone and each person to know what they're ultimately responsible for, and then lets them navigate the way in which to get there. And then 2, it also tends to reduce duplication. So you don't have 2 people doing the same thing. Or even worse, 2 people doing the same thing and getting different outcomes. And a job description is not a role and responsibility. It's a good starting point, but that's where the high performance culture that you're creating and crafting will then fill in some of these gaps and provide an important environment that will drive people to go above and beyond. So another component is around building common goals. And building common goals moves the business towards your vision and creating milestones along the way for you as a team to celebrate and to judge progress. Effective goal setting, though, is a bit art and a bit science. But using something like the SMART framework that you're seeing on the screen here can create more impactful common goals. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So let's break that down. Let's say that you have a goal of reaching $1 billion in AUM in 10 years, and you have a current level of 250 million. Well, is it specific? Yes. Is it measurable? Again, yes. We can argue about how timely 10 years is, but let's say that it is, so check that off. What about realistic and achievable? Because I think that that number is fairly lofty. Now, I'm not saying that you don't want to set high expectations or even stretch goals. But what I am saying is that when you look at a goal, if it is comprised of 95% faith, luck, and hope, then maybe you need to reevaluate. So let's shift gears and talk about the processes and the importance of formalizing what we do. Because when you take the time to define your processes step by step, it does enable you to refine and streamline them and then increase efficiency along the way as well. It also ensures that what you do is repeatable and consistent with everyone you work with, and it makes it easier for you to onboard more individuals into your team. So on the screen, you're seeing some suggestions of ideas of processes to document that allow for that repeatable, scalable business. You want your process to be simple, and if you can, to automate them. The creation of these does seem daunting. And I've found, though, writing out your steps as you're doing these tasks, it works as a really good strategy to put pen to paper on them. And the other thing as you're documenting is don't process improve as you're doing it. Just write it down, and then you can come back and look to refine and improve on processes. So I did mention this before, but trust is a foundational element of the team, because when all team members trust each other, then tremendous things can happen. But how do you foster that environment? There's 4 things that you want to look to integrate. So first, respect. Because at times you may not agree, but you must respect. And take notice of how you listen and demonstrate you're listening to your team as well. And then transparency. As a business leader, you may not be able to share everything, but if you can, share. And we aren't all infallible. So take the opportunity, no matter how awkward it might be, to be vulnerable and accountable amongst your team. And then care. Theodore Roosevelt probably said it best. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So take the big and then little opportunities to show how much you care to your team. I'll give you a quick example. I had a boss once who this wasn't really part of his nature, but he knew the importance of it. So he actually put a daily recurring reminder in his calendar that said praise, and he would then go and praise somebody different amongst the team every single day. And that was his way of holding himself accountable and keeping himself notified of it. And then the 4th thing is unite. Bring your team together in ways that promote your values and your team needs. This is not about doing a ropes course together or doing trust falls in the office. It can be as simple as even getting together on Monday mornings and having a kickoff and talking about your weekend and setting priorities for the week. So now let's talk about building your leadership skills, because engaged leadership is not about command and control. It's in fact the opposite of that. It's about inspiring your team to get the most out of them. And according to the research you're seeing there, inspired staff are more productive than satisfied staff alone. But inspiring isn't easy. You do have to work at it. So here are some characteristics of an engaged leader who's able to inspire their team. They're present. They make everyone on the team feel important. They infuse positivity and optimism. They could be considered a bit of a cheerleader. They recognize good and hard work, and they're vocal about it within the team. And they keep everyone focused on their priorities, so people aren't wasting time doing things that aren't necessarily important for those visions. And they empathize, and they provide moral support. It does not mean that you need to be Mr. or Mrs. Fix-It within your business. Sometimes you just have to listen and let people understand and come to their own decisions. So here are some examples of engaged leaders. And some of these individuals do embody some of the principles that I was just talking about. So Tim Cook from Apple, Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook, Barack Obama, who probably doesn't need an introduction. Really, none of them do. But rather than go through each one of them, I'm going to isolate in on and tell a little bit more about Tim Cook. So CEO of Apple, one of his biggest contributors to Apple may be stabilizing them after Steve Jobs' death. And that could have been considered the cornerstone of his time as being a CEO. But some of the leadership and strategy that he employed is arguably even more important. And one of the things that he did was he reorganized Apple's teams. And he did this around project managers. And he built a structure in which they own the project from start to finish and all the components that go into that. Now, what his leadership team does is it provides vision, it provides support, it provides tools, it provides guidance, but it kills the silos within these teams, within these organizations, or within his organization. And it empowers everyone within these constructs to reach really their fullest potential. So thinking about your team, how would they describe you as a leader? Even just thinking about your own leadership style from the perspective of your team can help you figure out, maybe I do have some gaps that I need to work on. And keep refining your skills to become the leader that you want to be. And that will look to inspire your team to become high performing as well. Which brings us to the run component. And I will begrudgingly use a Bill Belichick quote because I'm not a New England Patriots fan, but he says, do your job. If you don't know, Bill Belichick is the head coach of the New England Patriots, arguably one of the best NFL coaches, but it's a quote that gets repeated a lot. So I'll repeat it again just to do my job, but do your job. Essentially, I rely on you to do your job so I can do mine and we can get to our goal together. So having clear communication between the leader and the team and between individuals on the team is absolutely linked to higher levels of team success. So a couple ways that you can facilitate better communication within your team. You want to leverage all methods of communication that you have at your disposal. So email, face-to-face, different messenger apps, Teams, Skype, video or phone calls. But you also want to choose the right one for the right message. So if something is important and it's urgent, well, talk to them directly. If it's not urgent, then there you have the option to choose something like email. But you also want to take into account the person that you're communicating with and their preferences around that communication platform. Having a weekly team meeting to keep everyone updated is another great strategy. The thing that I would incorporate into that is allow your team to craft a portion of the agenda so that they're contributing and they have buy-in in those meetings too. And confirm whether you're working, confirm information rather than just working on assumptions. Another characteristic of an engaged leader is leading by example. So much of this goes down to, as a leader, how we communicate, and then you take in communication. And you don't want to take communication for granted because it is an absolutely powerful tool in your toolbox. But to leverage it effectively, you really have to be intentional around it. And as a leader, you need to be able to delegate. Because if you are doing everything within your team, you're kind of missing the point. And this is, in fact, an extremely difficult part for a lot of advisors that we work with. And a lot of that is because you have done, in a lot of cases, all of these tasks at some point. And some you might not want to hand over as much as others, especially if somebody is doing something a little bit of a different way than you always done it. But you do need to leverage your team's strengths and empower them to do more so that you can do more. And your team is going to stumble at times, but that's how they learn, and that's how they develop, and that's how they excel. So here's a delegation exercise. I've used this recently with a team. They had about 10 individuals that were at their shop. And what they did is they listed all the tasks that they do in a given amount of time, say a week or a month. And it could be as easy as opening up a spreadsheet and writing down what you're doing and then how much time it takes. That's where you start. And then after that predetermined time, you come back, and this is where the analysis comes in. Here, you look at each task and you itemize it and document it according to one of four things. Is it a task that you love? Is it a task that you hate? Is it a necessary task? And I would define this as it's essential, but you don't love it, you don't hate it, it's just something that needs to be done. Or it's unnecessary. This is the road that you've created, something that you incorporated into your business, and you don't really remember if it serves a purpose or not. Now, this is where you then go about stopping those unnecessary tasks. And you can ask clients, maybe if it impacts something that they've been doing, if they don't want to see it anymore, you can take it out. You want to keep doing the I love tasks, and you want to hone in on two things. You want to hone in on the necessary tasks and the I hate these tasks. And the question that you'd ask to each one of them is, Can it be delegated? Well, if it can, we can go ahead and delegate it. And it is a powerful exercise to go through. And one of the reasons that it is a powerful exercise is you can measure it. Remember, I said, write down the times that each one of these tasks takes, because now you can actually measure how much time you've potentially saved. Maybe that's enough to take on a new client meeting each week. And a high-performing team is always looking at ways in which to improve. And you can't improve in a lot of cases unless you haven't measured it, or unless you measure it. So you should try to measure as much as you can. And on the screen, you're seeing some examples of some things that you can measure. And one of the things you want to do when it is coming to measuring things is measure on a more frequent basis, because then it's going to allow you to course correct as time goes instead of just getting blindsided. And make sure that you communicate these expectations and these measurements to the team so that you can all further adjust and even celebrate some of the milestones along the way. No matter how good your team is and how good you are as a leader, there are absolutely going to be disagreements. But that's not a problem. The problem is the way that we potentially handle them. And that's the difference between winning and non-winning teams, is that they don't break down if there's a disagreement. And Jeff Bezos has an interesting policy, and this is at Amazon. It's called disagree and commit, what you're seeing here. It starts by presenting various points of view and then looking at these factors as a team, and then debating them vigorously if necessary, because we're not looking for consensus. And which should say, for you as the leader, you don't want to be the person presenting the point of view first. You should let your team go first. Consensus isn't the goal of this process. We need to really just be committing on a direction to move the team forward and having everyone commit to that direction. So a couple conditions that need to exist for this process to really work. One, there needs to be that culture of respect. So the people can present their ideas, feel that they haven't been attacked, and then potentially agree to disagree. As a leader, you have to become a role model for this process and for this type of behavior so that you can show respect, and you can show respect, especially when somebody disagrees with you. Another condition that needs to exist is the culture that we've created, that high performance culture, to ensure that those bigger decisions are guided by our vision, our values, and our mindset. However, absolutely, you as a leader may need to step in and make a call one way or the other. And if you want to run a winning team, you want to focus on creating that environment where you can get people to agree to disagree, but still move forward proactively as a group. And especially in our world, we do need to consider that customer experience. Because in creating a good customer experience, you do need to first understand where the customer journey falls and the journey that that client takes with you. So this does mean creating that choreography for every touch point, and I will not get up and dance as I say that, but you want to have this touch point scripted for you and for your team and for each one of your clients. At each stage, considering who needs to be involved, who needs to do what, and what expertise they bring to the table at each and every component. And later I'll talk about this a little bit more. But for now, let me give you an example of how having a great customer service experience can positively impact your business. And this is a story about an investment advisory team who really wanted to reinvent their customer experience. And you're seeing the breakdown of some of the team stats on the slide. But the principal of this team had a belief. And the belief was an incredible customer service that they're able to deliver not only retains, but it also attracts new business. So one of the things that they did is they partnered with an outside consulting firm. And they did this to take their client experience to the next level. And then rather than anchoring themselves to incredible financial advisor customer service, they looked everywhere. And that led them to the Ritz-Carlton. At the Ritz, there is a value statement. The value statement is ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. In fact, at the Ritz, every meeting and shift is started with the question, in the last 24 hours, how did we as a team live up to being the greatest serviced hotel chain in the world? How did we as a team make a difference for our guest? So this team emulated that service experience from the Ritz. And they did this by ensuring that everybody had this wow experience that was built out, and then working with the team to ensure that it keeps everyone talking. The group's services are incredible. and they give clients a phenomenal, unique experience, really like none other. And as a result, they've created a pipeline of referrals, really without ever having to ask. So let me talk about a couple ways now that you can look to scale your team to support your vision. So before looking outside, you want to look inside your team to scale. And one of the best ways to do this is to scale up your team skills through their talent and continuous learning. So some of the research that you're seeing is that it leads to 218% higher revenue on average per employee. Deloitte has some research as well that says that each team member should be dedicating around 1% of their week to continuous learning. So if you do the math, someone that's working 40 hours a week, you can round that up and say that's approximately 30 minutes a week that should be dedicated to learning. But you've got to allow and block this off for your team and allow people and encourage it to be done. Another thing that you can do here is asking your group, your staff, your team, what they would like in terms of training and certifications to continue and be better at their jobs, and encouraging them to sign up for workshops and industry certifications. You do have to hire the right people, but sometimes you might already have the right people in your business. You just need to develop them more to get more out of them. Now, looking inwards can only get you so far. Absolutely. Everyone has a capacity. And when that capacity is maxed, well, then you do need to think about another avenue in which to scale. And another avenue can be adding to your team. And we get this question a lot. When is the best time to add to my team? There's a lot that goes into that question. There's a lot to be able to answer that depending on everybody's unique business. But if I was to answer it generally, I would say before you're ready. And I know it feels wrong, but consider this. So you want to grow. Today you decide that you want to continue to growing. You've reached your capacity. You've maxed out. You decide to bring on a new team member. You begin searching, you interview, you offer, you wait for them to give notice to their past employer. Then by the time that you fully onboarded them into your group, months have passed. And if you didn't start until you were absolutely maxed out in terms of your capacity and you needed this resource, what happened throughout the process? Were you actually able to dedicate the time to go through it correctly and then to onboard and recruit somebody new? Now, when it's time to hire someone, absolutely, you want to make sure that you have the right person, but that is easier said than done. And I've had the benefit of having some good hires in my career and some bad ones, as I've hired and trained and onboarded a lot of people in various roles in my career. So a couple things, again, you're seeing on the screen that are really crucial to look for. Is one, cultural fit. So ensuring that you create a consistent set of interview questions, assessing your candidates, making sure that they align specifically to your values, your vision, and your mindset. You can leverage something like a personality test. It's another data point to consider. And competencies. You definitely, and I mentioned this, you want to hire the right people with the right experience, but sometimes you can't find that person right now, or it's going to take them a while to come in. So rather than wait, you can consider hiring some people with less experience and then training them up, especially if you've already built the foundation, that you've systematized your business so it can ramp them up quickly. And here's a tip for you. It's something that I really advocate for when you're looking to hire and onboard into your team. It's taking a page out of the book of pilots. Now, a pilot, when they go through their interview process, they really do three things. They do a competency test, and then they have an interview. Now, you can study for the competency test, and you can say all the right things in an interview. But if I'm hiring a pilot, they better be able to fly. So that's the last phase. They throw them into a flight simulator and see if they can actually fly. So in your final round of your interviews, create a simulation, create a job simulation where they work alongside your team, where you can gauge, is this somebody that our team could work with, and can they actually fly with us? And I talk about this, and we talked about scaling, but I do want to briefly mention a couple other ways that you can scale. You could bring in a team of consultants, get an outsider's view on your business. You can buy a book of business. It's regularly discussed. There tends to be a lot of demand, but it is absolutely still a good option for some individuals. And another one that is often overlooked is getting small to get big. Finding a new niche. It does open the door to greater growth opportunities. Research shows that advisors that focus on niches do produce better results than those that work with all different types of clients. We do actually have a niche and client identification tool, and a tool around specialized branding where you can enunciate and communicate the niche. So those are two things, if you reach out to Morgan or Dan, that they'd be happy to get in your hands. All right, home stretch. I'm going to highlight a couple key best practices that you can look to implement in your businesses. And I'm going to start with the foundation and setting the culture, because that's the core of a high performance team. So first, defining your culture, then documenting it, and then communicating it. And you want to start with your vision. What do you want your business to look like in 5, 10, 15, 20 years? What types of clients do you want to serve? And then establishing your values, asking questions like, what do you want your team to embody? And what do you want your team to believe in? And then one of my favorite tricks is you employ the 3-year-old rule and ask why to all of those pieces. Why do these values matter to us? Answering those questions are powerful. And then finally, crafting that shared mindset, thinking about how you get everyone to be thinking in the same way. So on the screen, you're seeing some different high-level examples of a potential cultural framework that can be arrived at by answering some of those questions. Next, you want to create some SMART goals, or put your existing goals through a SMART model. And remember, that means that your goals should be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. And there are a lot of ways. There are a lot of ways to drill down in your goals into this framework. However, here are a couple examples of questions that you can look to ask about your goals. So, how do you know when you've actually achieved this goal? On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being absolutely attainable, where is this goal on the scale of attainability? Do you have sufficient time to accomplish this objective? What does a successful outcome look like? What does a successful outcome feel like? Just a couple examples to get you working through this framework. Which brings us to defining roles and responsibilities. And most people that I work with will say, well, this is all good. Like, our team knows what they need to do to execute. But as you really dig in, I find that that's not necessarily always the case. And you can truly create a better situation, both internally and externally, for your team. So what's a way you can go about doing this? And this is an exercise I've used with a lot of teams. So first, you clarify your roles and you identify gaps and responsibilities. So what do? List out the roles in your team. Then list out each of the tasks that each one of these roles should be doing. And then finally, what are they doing? And this is not to try to assign blame or to find out who's doing well and who's doing poorly. It is about trying to find some of these gaps that exist. And then for those gaps, you need to come up with a game plan. And then the second component of this is clearing up your roles and responsibilities by creating a framework around some of these most important tasks. So for each task, you look to identify and document who's responsible, who's accountable, who needs to be consulted, and this could be internally or externally, and then who needs to be informed of this task. And last but not least, you need to make sure that this is communicated to your team and that everyone understands. And for that matter, building out an ideal client experience or that customer journey, and then ensuring that as your clients move along that journey, that each member of your team knows what to do to execute and when to execute. And writing out this choreography step by step on things like, how a client is onboarded and how a client gets serviced over time allows you and your team to know the right member is going to be there at the right time with the right expertise. So high level on the screen, you can see an example of how this could look over some phases. And finally, working on developing ourselves as leaders and challenging ourselves to make sure that we're rising to the challenge in really 3 key areas. The first would be instilling trust and respect. Some ideas on the screen, but this needs to be authentic to you. So take some time to think about how you can foster this environment within your teams. And then establishing clear communication. Again, some ideas on the screen, but one of the things I would ask myself is, how intentional are you being around your communication? And also taking into account the person that you're communicating with and the medium that you're using through those communications. And finally, setting the right expectations. Again, some ideas on the screen, but make sure these expectations are clear and understood by your team. What are you doing to ensure that these expectations are being met? How are you, in fact, modeling this behavior for your team? I realistically could build out an entire presentation around leadership, but just like the teams that you work with, leadership comes in all shapes and sizes. You don't need to be born a leader. It is a skill that can be learned and refined over time. Which brings us to the end. So before I close, I do want to go back to the beginning and where we started with Michael Schumacher on our F1 team and Ferrari. The driver on an F1 team is very similar to your clients. They're driving along and they're in their financial life, and that's really the car, and that's the plan that you provided to them. Your team, they're the pit crew, they're the strategists, they're the mechanics, they're the engineers, they're the trainers, they're the psychologists that work with these clients. You need to build, you need to tweak, and you need to guide that car to its inevitable finish line, working together to take it to the next level. Now it's up to you to continue to leverage your team's skills and lay the foundation for high performance, because really when everyone is working together, it will provide exceptional results. And even a little flare up in the pits, like happened to Michael Schumacher, well, that won't be anything for your clients to worry about, because they'll know that their team has got this. So with that being said, I'm going to hand it back off to Morgan to close us and see if we have any questions.
Thanks, Ryan. That was absolutely excellent as always. Just a reminder, if anyone does have any questions for Ryan, there is a chat function that you can access on the right-hand side of the screen. So don't mind, just type something down there and we'd be happy to answer it to you. Or if you'd like, you can either follow up with Dan and I after the call. We'd be more than happy to get those answered as well. Our view at CI here is that advisory teams are going to become more common across the industry, and that high-performing teams will become kind of the new gold standard. So bringing the customer experience to a new level with a refined approach and wider range service is going to be more and more important. And as Ryan mentioned, our firm has many resources to help you build out your advisory team, including shareable blog posts and podcasts and insights like today's events to help you create a winning team. So if you'd like to learn more about how to build, run, or scale a high-performing team, as Ryan has talked about today, please reach out to Dan and I. We're more than happy to do some one-on-one consulting and really wanted to focus on you, the advisor, and helping you build out your business. And we can go from there. But I wanted to thank Ryan for his time today. That was excellent. Thanks to Dan, and I'll give you guys, if there's no questions in the chat, which it looks like here, I'll give back everyone 10 minutes of their day. I know you guys are busy, so with that, appreciate your time. Don't hesitate to reach out, and have a great rest of the day. Thanks, everyone.